times the management of many of those, the vision, the strategy, the mission, the objectives, they need to be outlined clearly in some of the written or scribed ways that we know of, like policies and procedures, guidelines, baselines, and standards. And there are some very distinct things that we need to make sure that we have, like, for instance, an acceptable use policy. What are people going to be doing on our network? So things like an AUP is important. Maybe if we look at the different practices that we go out and try to adhere to, things like the acceptable use policy definitely come into play. And it's important for us to make sure that we are practicing security in a way that will allow us to adhere to any types of guidelines that that are current or that are best practice in our business. And I say that because usually you will see at least 2 of these, if not 3 of these, on your exam. So hang tight for 1 second and let me give you what I'm talking about here. So a security policy is a way for us to go in and look at an overall or a general statement about how security plays into the organization. So for us in this particular regard, this will be a statement of what is the position of the organization on a given topic. And you see these all the time. I'm sure that you guys have written or read policies, whereas standards are a little bit different, but similar in nature, where we talk about the different types of policies, like an acceptable use policy, maybe a vulnerability management policy, a data protection policy, an email policy, incident response policy, all sorts of crazy policies that are out there. You may even have policies that are directly related to regulatory, like in a financial arena, something like Gramm-Leach-Bliley or Sarbanes-Oxley. If you're taking credit card payments, maybe PCI, DSS, payment card industry data security standard. If you're in the medical profession, maybe something like HIPAA, where you have to keep people's personal information and you have to tell them how you're protecting that. Policies can also be informative, they can be advisory, whereas standards typically refer to things like mandatory activities, actions, or rules. In this particular case, I'm going to write that up here for you. So mandatory activities, actions, rules. And they give us standards can give us a policy that it supports and helps to reinforce its direction for us. So anytime that we have the ability to try to standardize something, we want to try to adhere to that as best as possible. An example that typically you hear that the policy is that all confidential data must be properly protected. Maybe that's something that we think about. The way that we can implement a standard could be that confidential information must be protected by AES 256-bit encryption at rest and in transit. So that would be something a practice of security in that particular regard. A baseline typically refers to a point in time that allows us to really a checkpoint or to refer back to if need be. I a lot of times I'll think about virtual machines and virtual images in this particular regard, where we can refer back to a baseline image. But essentially, anything that you've done since that baseline, if it's not iterative and kept up and made a backup, you may end up having lost that in the virtual world. But you have a baseline policy that you refer to, and then you can build on top of that policy maybe. So that's something to think about. A guideline is basically a recommendation or recommended action. And the reason why I'm enumerating these is because, again, you're going to see 3 to 5 of these on your exam, maybe as 1 to 3 questions. So definitely make sure that you're making a note card or just making a note that you're going to be able to, you're going to be tested on these 5 words over on the left-hand side. So procedure, lastly, here is a detailed step-by-step that enumerates different tasks that need to be accomplished in order to achieve a certain goal. And that's really in the gist of it what we need to look for whenever we're going through and managing security. Some of these things that we have over on the right-hand side, you may have heard of, but the acquisitions. How do you acquire companies? Divestitures, like how do you break up companies? Like for instance, a big company may want to keep intellectual property over here with one company and intellectual property with another company, so maybe they'll be able to break that up. And then a lot of times what we'll see is that you may have different committees that are formed where people have pockets of expertise that allows us to lean on them to help us with IT security governance appropriately.